Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. We're live. We're here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter via Periscope. And look who's here, everybody. It's been a while since we've seen each other face to face, let alone do a podcast. So welcome, Scott Snyder, to Word Balloon. It's great to talk to you, man.
Yeah, you too, John. Thanks for having me back, man. I've been looking forward to this. Sorry I've been so scarce.
Nah, it's okay, man. I've been dying ever since that one late night in San Diego to talk more Elvis with you. So I'm sure we're going to make some time for the King before we wrap up.
I'm wearing a great shirt. I got at Graceland quite a while ago. So
outstanding, man. I know people have questions, and I promise I will get to them. But I would like to, because it's been so long since I've talked to Scott, start things off with the conversation, and we'll get to death metal certainly. And also, I expect people are going to be popping in. But I do want to talk about your image book that you're doing with Charles Soule, Undiscovered Country. Yeah. And man, I'll tell you, I mean, you had some, this is, I know, several years in the making, but my God, it's kind of sad how the real world has mirrored your story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we wrote something about it in the issue today, actually, that came out. But I mean, for us, it was always just a thought experiment. And it's a book that in some ways, like, the weirdest part is that, first of all, let me just say thank you to everybody out there who's tuning in. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a crazy year all around, and a lot of what we've seen, I think, with the comics industry itself and the way that the community has kind of come together to support stores and creators and fans and all of it, during this time has been incredibly inspiring to me and my family. So really appreciate it. And thank you for being a part. But yeah, I mean, the weirdest part is that I think we set out to do a book that was almost like meant to feel like escapism. It was going to be this kind of, old school adventure, Land of the Lost sort of big exploratory, bombastic, epic journey planned over like 30 issues. But it was always behind that meant to be really personal and resonant. The weirdest part is that the kind of circumstances by which the whole country changes at the beginning of the story weren't really the things that we thought would be timely. There were elements of that, of course, talking about border closings, but it wasn't about any real sort of specific political calculus. It was more about this kind of rising feeling of isolationism and tribalism and strange forms of nativism and all of this kind of feeling that we're being sort of encouraged to divest ourselves from any kind of communal national identity and instead, celebrate our differences in a way that or not celebrate our differences, but almost sort of only cling to people that are sort of moving away from anyone unlike them. So I feel like a lot of the loudest voices in the room right now, obviously the president and other people, but are sort of encouraging division. And that idea of this kind of the fear of the desire for isolationism was what the book was about. Ultimately, the thing that it kind of comes back to, it's a whole journey where these characters who have nothing in common and have almost no reason to have been chosen for this big mission wind up becoming family. So in that regard, it feels resonant to us just because of how when we wrote the thing at the end too. I mean, it was about COVID. It was mostly just about COVID and how siloed everybody is from one another. But I think there's kind of an ugly drive to silo us from one another in other ways by, again, some of the people you would hope would be out there inspiring us to try and come together and look at the difficult things we have to change about ourselves to be better,
Absolutely.
Which is why I think the conversation going on right now is so healthy and important, for all of us to acknowledge the things that we have to reckon with to be better individually and be better collectively, instead of sort of insulating ourselves against those things.
I completely agree, man. No, it's a time to come together. And it is challenging given what's happening with COVID. But certainly the responses to what has been happening by the authorities is unacceptable, and change has to come. Now, regarding Undiscovered Country, and you correct me, but basically the United States has isolated itself for 30 years, 50 years?
Yeah, it's 30 years, but what you learn in the book pretty quickly is that within the premise is that maybe about 7 or 8 years from now, the United States suddenly decides to kind of remove itself from the world stage. So the border walls have already been constructed partly because of climate change to seawalls, and then partly for sort of fear of immigration. And they're enacted in these really aggressive it moves to kind of lock the country away, turn it into a black box, no communication, no one comes or goes, no photographs, nothing. So it becomes this mystery for about 30 years. And then this team is invited in suddenly of specialists. All of the people on the team have a secret, though, or have some sort of element in their past that makes them not really who you think they are kind of going in. And the team goes in and finds that the country isn't what was promised in this message, this beacon that comes out. And the team is invited in right at this sort of crucial moment when the whole world is suffering from this pandemic called the sky virus. And there's really only almost a timeline of about 6 months, 7 months before it becomes almost cataclysmic, where nobody, it's going to wipe out pretty much everybody. So this message comes from America, from a mysterious guy who used to be part of this this research group, and he promises that America has made all of these technological leaps, and that at the center of the country is this shining city, and they will give the team a cure for this virus should they follow the rules, come in the right way, and be able to kind of speak to the sort of achievement that America has been able to become, And so when they get in, they're immediately shut down, and they land, and it's mayhem. It's like monster, terrestrial fish monsters, and a tribe of people that have repurposed all space shuttles and space rockets and wear these astronaut things, and so it's almost like a giant, soap opera of huge kind of clashing visions of what the country might become. And so each zone they have to move through as they get towards the center is almost a wildly different biome with its own history. And what you learn is that inside the United States, for mysterious reasons, things are moving at different speeds in terms of time chronologically than they are on the outside. So some zones might be 100 years in the future. Some zones might be 500 years in the future. Some might be 2 years in the future. So it's really almost like a incredibly mysterious, weird, kaleidoscopic journey through this extremely changed U.S.
I love it, man. I think it's a great high concept. I want to show people the map of the United States, and it kind of shows you some of the different areas that have changed as this radical departure from the rest of the world occurred.
Yeah, and that's just the map that the guy who invites them in, his name was Sam Elgin, Dr. Sam Elgin. And when they land, they find him, strangely, he doesn't remember sending this message, and he thinks of himself as this mythological figure, Uncle Sam, and that's his map that he drew himself based on kind of memory of the city at the center. So there's a lot of surprises along the way as well. There are 13 zones with 13 maps. And the issue that's coming out next month, July, issue 7, is the first time we go back where the majority of the issue, some of it shows you what's happening with the characters going forward, and you see the next zone they're going to wind up in. But part of it is actually, the majority of it is a look back at how the country became what it is. So it's a moment in time when it's at a crossroads about 20 years before it becomes what it is now. So you see Sam in the past, and you learn more about the Destiny Man and some of the characters as they were before they became what they are now. So we really love it. I mean, Charles is a dear friend, and Camo is also a friend, and Matt Wilson, we go back as well. So it's a joy to work on, and we never expected it to have the following it does. So we're really grateful. We're going to launch a website soon where when we
Oh,
do
wow.
the trade in July, where everyone can kind of come and connect with us and have designs and all the stuff. It's already built. We just have to make it public. But we're going to do that and do more postcards. And I don't know, we really want to make this something we can do all the way through like 30, 40 issues. Now
Really?
we're aiming for 50, but we'll see.
Okay.
Charles was very good. I got to say, I'm not a good business person. I am like the tramp that like, was always like, my parents were like, you got to learn about money and this and that if you want to be a writer, and you got to learn to have a second job. And I was like, I'm going to be a janitor at Disney World. I don't care about that. And so for me, I'm more like, let's go in there and make a comic. Money will fall from somewhere. Charles was very good about being like, let's put aside a big war chest of what we make from the first couple issues to make sure we can always fund the next arc. So we actually have money in the bank to fund the next 2 arcs. We haven't taken barely any money, any of us, out, except to pay, the color Matt and Camo. But I mean, we're keeping it there so that we really can commit to doing the whole story and get to the end. So it's fun. It's weird though, because we're doing the screenplay as well, but it's like, to make it a movie, you have to change so many things. It's so weird because like we're writing the end of the series almost in that, or the end of like the midway point is the end of the movie almost. So but it's so weird holding the 2 versions of it in your head.
Interesting. Okay, and I mean that's interesting too. I mean, most writers know where they're eventually going as far as a wrap up, but that's ambitious that you want to do 50 issues. And again, I know it's a concern. It's a recurring conversation I have with image people in terms of after that, first bloom and blush of the flower when you're brand new and everyone's talking about it, but then all of a sudden it's issue 34. It's like, okay, are you going too long or whatever? So that's great that you can afford to do at least the next 2 arcs. And and also as far as the story itself, honestly, for people who haven't checked it out, think of Commandy. Think of there was one in particular war. Yeah. What's that?
Lost was an influence, and
sure, yeah. Tell me the other influences. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, Commandy. I mean, I love Commandy. I read a lot of Commandy when I was doing Justice League, and I wanted to actually. There is some Commandy stuff in Death Metal. I might have to take it out if I don't have room, but it's pretty cool. I'm just gonna spoil it. But I wanted to do like if Command D was Command D, what is Command A, B, C, and so on, and all that stuff.
Oh, very good. Sure.
With all of that, and then
interesting.
Yes. It's, anyway, but yes, I read a lot of Commandy. Commandy's an influence. Land of the Lost. I watch that shit religiously, and don't ever watch it now because it's awful. But when you're a kid, you see that little raft go over the thing, and I was like, oh my god, that in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon with Venger and that. Those things were my world. So it's that kind of a feeling of being transported somewhere, almost immersive and wildly, mystical and out there and mysterious. But again, like the idea was to do something that had its kind of ambitions and its sort of personal elements, the way metal does too, death metal and a lot of the superhero stuff I do. What it's about or what it means to me is kind of sublimated beneath the drive to make sure that if the story is using characters that almost demand a kind of fun, that it's fun and it's big and it's inviting, and then I kind of try and lure you in, and then beneath that is the stuff that matters to me in that way. So yeah, so Undiscovered Country is that. We're really thrilled with it, I mean, and then it was a great way to get back into Image. I mean, I love the guys there, and they took a chance on me with Witches, and were very kind when we got that started. We're coming back with that soon too.
Great.
Yeah, which I'm really thrilled with Jock. And then I'm going to do I have another couple things I'm announcing I won't give too much away, but I have another book there coming soon too. So I want this year, Death Metal is my big thing, DC. And I've got something big on the other side of Death Metal that steps away from kind of event stuff, but is still, I think, will excite people. And then I have a lot of indie stuff that I'm launching. That's my stuff, like a lot of books like that I've been thinking about for the last 10 years, and artists are attached and working on, issue 1s and 2s and 3s right now.
Well, before you were in the DC universe, we were all impressed with American Vampire, and and your short story work and everything. So no, it's great that you're coming back to creator owned. And I really like the science fiction aspect of Undiscovered Country. I think it's I think it's a great concept. Yeah, and again, another comparison I would make, if people like Lazarus, I mean, it's definitely a different turn, but it is this like postulating what could happen given our current world
Lazarus
situation.
is one of my favorite books on the shelf. I love that book. Was of the last few years that I would tell everybody about that one. I mean, Greg is amazing, and it's a killer. So thank you for that comparison at all.
Absolutely, man. And also what it sounds like, not only what you're talking about with the website, but all the back matter that's been in every issue and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, the story is about how the world has changed, and you're definitely world building and letting everybody in with great back matter as far as, you just kind of fleshing things out for the world. And yeah, I mean, it's a good meaty read, dude. Honestly, I think you and Charles really, and Camo and Dave and all of the whole group and everything. It's terrific. So
thanks. It's a blast. So it's again, thank you everybody for showing up for it. We didn't expect it to be as to be as strong as it is in terms of sales. So it means a lot to us. So
for people jumping in, the trade is coming out first week in July. Am I right?
Yeah, July. Yes.
Excellent. And issue 7 also in July?
We're going to they suggested we take that month off to focus just on the trade. So issue 7 comes out in August. Okay. Very cool. Excellent, man. No, it's a good chance to jump in. Hey, you can, if you don't want to wait, and will the back matter be in the trade or not? Yeah, it has the timeline, which we're catching you up to the sort of the moment that we're at right now. But the first arc really takes you through the sealing, through the kind of all the historical events or the major historical touchstones up until the point that America seals itself away from the rest of the world. So you'll get that back matter. You have designs, you have our essays, the things that we wrote about why we're writing the book. Yeah. How it came to be, things like that. So it should include all of that. Yeah. That's nice to hear that. I read those essays, and very cool that you and Charles got together here. You'll forgive the Chicago pride, but the fact, and especially on a day like today where we got another dose of police idiocy. People can check out the headlines themselves to get more details. Thankfully, it wasn't involving any violence. It was just negligence on the job. And it's ridiculous. But regardless, the happy stuff, because, especially right now where conventions are, on hold for a while and stuff. It was at C2E2, I guess, that you guys met, which is fantastic. And on a big run. Yeah, we did. Yeah, C2E2 was the first convention to ever invite me. I remember Really? Yeah. I had one issue of American Vampire under my belt because I think C2E2 was in April and issue 1 had come out in March. It was 2010. So, and they invited me and Raphael and we both went. And I remember, and they paid for me to go, which was amazing. Hey, and I remember, I was like nobody, I remember, or they paid for they paid for my badge. I don't remember if they paid for the room or I split that. I can't. It was too long ago. But sure, man. They were great to us. And what I remember is having American Vampire #1 and giving it to people that came to the table, and then watching them walk with it and then throw it out, and then I would go get it and bring it back to the table and dust it off. And the other funny thing was that was where actually it was that 2010 where I went because I had a meeting. It turns out that Dan DiDio, Jeff Johns, and Jim Lee, who were about to be kind of promoted to the whole kind of New 52, that whole thing where they became CCO and that whole triumvirate stuff, wanted to meet with me to see what I wanted to pitch for the DCU. So I was so nervous. I mean, I had never met any of them. And I was just terrified. And so I remember I was there and there was this giant, my meeting was on Saturday morning or something like that. And Saturday afternoon. And there was a big kitchen convention going on at the same time in the other area of the thing. And it was so weird because it was a real full blown kitchen appliance convention with a guy dressed like a sink, like a mascot, you know what I mean, and everything. And then they had these full displays where they were these beautiful bowls of fruit and wine and everything. And I remember I was hanging out, and my buddy Doyle, Mark Doyle, you know, he was like, "Let's go have a beer before your meeting and relax." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, 'cause it's, you know, whatever." And then there was no place to go, and then I was like, "Oh man, you know, yeah, I could, you know, if I just, I'd love to have like one glass of wine, one beer, just something, just like, you know, I'm so nervous, whatever." And I remember this guy came up to me, and I don't know who he was. He was like, "Hey kid," he was like, "You know, I heard you talking." He's like, "Those bottles of wine on those tables, man, look." And he had taken like a couple of the bottles of wine from the displays, and I was like, "Oh, that's so smart. Yeah, why not? I'll get a bottle of wine, have a glass of wine with my editor or whatever." So I remember going into the kitchen convention and having my hand out to like steal a bottle of wine off the display, and then being like, "I'm gonna get let out of here in handcuffs in front of Jim Lee." You know what I mean? And like, and Jeff Johns and Dan DiDio, before I even meet them, being like, "Oh, at our meeting, I want to pitch Detective Comics," you know, as I'm like dragged away. So I remember that moment very vividly as like a crossroads in my life where it could have gone one way or another way. So luckily I restrained myself.
Very good story. Very nice. And yeah, you're right, man.
People always have a very dear place in my heart.
Well, there you go, man. Well, and hopefully McCormick Place will be open soon, and sooner than later, and we'll all be able to congregate again. We'll see.
Yeah, I miss conventions. I really do. You know, I love getting out there. I miss Greg a lot. Miss Jock. You know, miss my friends. You know,
sure, man.
Seeing the fans too. I mean, I know it sounds silly. Like fans are always like, you know, do you really like those things? But we do. I mean, everybody I know, we like writing and drawing. I mean, they're lonely professions. You know, you sit here and you're just working alone, and to make anything good too, half the time you're pouring the things that you're afraid of into it, you know, so you're sitting alone with all your anxieties or your hopes or whatever. And then convention is a time to like go see the people that you actually make the thing with, that are your teammates that you trust with these ugly parts of yourself. You know, when I'm writing Witches and I'm like embarrassed about the things I'm putting on there about my fears of parenthood, and then you get to see Jock, and then you get together and you have dinner and you're like, "Thank you, man." Like all that stuff means a lot. And to have fans come up and say that they've read it, and whether they like it or they don't like it, just the fact that they reached out and read it, I mean, that connection is such a vital part of the whole relationship to, you know, to just creating stuff, that it is hard not having it in some way, you know. I miss them a lot, conventions.
I hear you, man. No, absolutely. Yeah. All right, I'll let people, we'll start talking about death metal, but before we do, I do want to talk about dark metal and the whole, you know, the characters that you created, Batman Who Laughs and everything. And where this story is going. My God, this is a sprawling epic that is many years in the making, and in the execution as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I can't believe it, but it's the truth, man. I pitched it with Josh Williamson and James Tynan, like all the way back as a kind of like bare bones addendum to when we pitched Metal back at New York Comic Con 2016. So I was like, if people like this thing and they like metal and, you know, they're into it, we'd really love to use it as an opportunity to kind of get back to being immersive. Because one of the things I think that we've had trouble with sometimes at DC, and sometimes it's been a strength and sometimes it hasn't, has been, you know, the lack of connectivity between different neighborhoods of books. So I'm not saying that all books should be one thing or one story, or, you know, lashed together in some way that robs them of their singularity. But I do think that having no connection and having no overlap and no communication between them in terms of the characters, you know, appearing in one book and then sort of referencing stuff in another book sometimes winds up hurting us, because one of the strengths is the idea that, you know, comics are connective, and that these worlds that we're building, it's one of the few things that we have. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe actually did it as well as comics does, but outside of that example, it's something that's pretty particular to our medium, you know. So metal, the idea was to be able to do metal, fan out from that with a bunch of story, and then come back together and sort of explode in this bigger way. And along the way, there were definitely like a lot of twists and turns, and some of the story that we had planned wound up getting expanded, and some got truncated, and some wound up over here and there. But for the most part, the plan is pretty much what it was. You know, some elements got elevated and some got muted, But you can kind of go back and look at my social media, and you see like the meetings that we had when we were pregnant with Quinn, who's now 1, which I can't believe, but we were pregnant with him at the time, which is why I couldn't travel to LA. So people would come here and we'd have summits here in this town that I live in, was because we were planning this. We were planning death metal. I mean, all the way through, you know? So,
wow.
you know, we have pictures of the whole runway from metal, No Justice, New Justice, which is the 3 books, these twin stories, one that's kind of a Batman Who Laughs story, one that's a Luthor one, the Luthor one running through the Justice League books, the Batman Who Laughs one running through Batman and Superman, and also through the actual titular series, and then Batman Who Laughs, and then kind of doing something that was like You're the Villain or Ha. We didn't know what we were going to do. It depended on DC's demands. And then fanning out to whatever other things wanted to be a part, and then kind of clashing, coming back and smashing it all together in this big kind of epic finale, and then, you know, retiring or just moving away from that kind of massive storytelling to doing things that are more individuated. So yeah, that was it's pretty much what we pitched back then, which is a moment, and it's weird because it wound up being quite resonant for us, you know, because it was always about the world having changed very quickly, where the Batman Who Laughs has kind of given reign over the whole earth. And just if you're you know, not to P.T. Barnum shit and be out there juggling and promoting stuff, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that if you haven't read anything that we've done so far, you don't have to. You can pick it up. We're very aware of, you know, wanting it to be able to be a first comic. So don't worry if you don't know what we got here. But the heroes kind of feel like the world changed in an instant. They don't quite remember what happened. But in this new world, the Batman Who Laughs has been given kind of control of the earth. And by the forces that Perpetua, kind of this cosmic being who he's partnered with, have granted the powers that she's granted him, they've changed the earth almost in terms of its actual physical shape, like its physical geography, so that the Pangea continent almost looks like a bat. And they've moved everything around. So like, you know, Metropolis is over here, the Valley of the Fallen Rings is over here, New Apocalypse is over here. It's a lot of fun. And so the heroes have been totally subjugated. Most are in prison in New Apocalypse, which is inside the sun and kind of guarded by Dark Father. The world is all evil Batman. So get ready for like evil Batman, one of whom is like the robot dinosaur with Bruce's consciousness uploaded into him. And another is a monster truck Batmobile, and another, which Daniel, by the way, Daniel Warren Johnson did that one, which is one of my favorite. It's like, it's just lunacy in the best way and the smartest, best thing. And Garth Ennis did an evil baby Batman, and Warren Ellis did the B-Rex Batman.
Crazy.
And yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I love it. It's just like, I can't believe they just let us do it, but it's good. When I read it, I'm like, this is good. Becky Cloonan did. I won't get too far into it, but anyway, the world's run by evil Batman. The heroes have to rebel, and they've all been separated from each other. Wonder Woman's the lead. She realizes the only way to win is to use this, basically that to go back to enter the Dark Multiverse and find the original crises, gather that energy, because crises sort of disrupt the universe, and come back, use that energy, come back and disrupt the universe and change it back to what it was somehow. Okay. So we get to revisit the greatest crises of DC history. There's no time travel, but it's like happening in the Dark Multiverse. So there's a twist on them when you get there. I'm giving like way too much away. This is like October shit now that I'm talking about it. So I love it. I've been thinking about it forever. So it's super bonkers. It's really heartfelt. It is super bonkers. It is ultimately like, you'll see the first page is Sergeant Rock talking directly to you. You don't know why. It makes sense later why he's kind of breaking the fourth wall, but he's talking to you, and people are like, there's nobody there, Rock. And he's like, yeah, there is. There's soldiers there. And he's talking to, we meant it as a love letter to retailers and fans and everybody that's part of the community, just saying, you know, we're going to get through this time. It was written for COVID, you know, together.
Wow.
And find a stronger. We're gonna go through some battles. We're gonna go through some real tough stuff. But we care about the ideal of what this thing is, and on the other side, we'll find a way through. And so I'm really excited for people to read it. There are way more important things to focus on in the world right now and to be a part of than a comic event. But we hope it brings you some joy, and we put a lot into it in terms of how we feel about the industry and what it means to us. So I hope people enjoy it.
That's cool, man. No, and I think, God, I mean, the way that the story has just rolled into, as you say, Justice League and No Justice and New Justice and everything. So now, forgive me, I might be a little behind. Are the New Justice books out yet, or are they still coming?
Oh, New Justice was the kind of our banner that we had on Justice League Odyssey, and Justice League Dark.
Oh, okay.
So that was those three, but we are tying into. We haven't announced it yet, so I don't know if I'm supposed to say, but we're tying into some books come November, December.
Oh, okay.
I have this board. I tweeted it today, but I can show it to you. But essentially, there are 2 points at which during the event we kind of fan out. So it goes June, July, August, and in August we just have 2 specials alongside issue 3, and the specials are like a guide to the Metalverse, so you get to see how everything became what it is, and it's really fun. It's like Becky Cloonan writing Aquaman and why he became this kind of captain of the Black Seas, and and Chip Zdarsky's in it. It's super fun.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, and then the other one is a guide to all the evil Batmen. So I love that one. It's got what happened to the Batman who laughs, what he becomes something else, and it has it has a whole host of crazy evil Batmen, and one of whom's like a living city, one of whom's it's all nuts, but it's fun. And then so that's sort of June, July, August. August has the 2 specials on the side. All the specials, by the way, are almost 40 pages. So they're big. So It's actually quite much. It's bigger than Metal, the first one. But and then September we're taking a month off from the main series. But the big chapter that I'm doing there, that's basically like an issue, the way that Batman Lost and Wild Hunt were for Metal. It's called Trinity Crisis, and it's the heroes finding the crises in the dark. And Francis Manipal is drawing the whole thing.
I read about that. That's awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's great. He's one of my closest friends. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
He's one of my buds. Absolutely, man. That's good to hear.
Right. And then Speed Metal is Josh Williamson and Howard Porter and stuff. And it's all the Flashes together, everyone plus Black Racers plus, Red Deaths and everything.
Wow. Johnny Quick too, perhaps? You'll forgive me. My favorite speedster, Johnny Quick. Is he going to make it in there?
You're going to have to read it. I can't give away too much. And then the other special written by James Tynion is Multiverse's End, and it shows what happens to the multiverse, and Jon Stewart is the lead over there. But it's also everybody you've ever wanted to see from Multiversity who's still alive, because there's only 8 planets left in the multiverse by this point.
Wow.
So that September is those 3 books in place of Metal, and then October is Metal 4. And then in November, December, January, which is where we finish, we're 7 issues long. So it's crazy to think too, because I'm always I know it's packed, but it's Batman Who Laughs was as long as this, and this is a cosmic, crazy ass event. So it's definitely dense, but that's where we're really going to leave it up to fans. We have some plans. My favorite one is called The Last 52, and one is I won't give too much away because I'm not even supposed to talk about them yet because they're so far down the line. But the idea is to really try and be modular and let fans speak their mind. And we try and be very aware. I mean it honestly. We're all really sensitive to the idea that it's a rough time for disposable income. We don't want you to feel pushed around where you have to read multiple things to get the story. If you want to just read Metal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can, and it will be collected that way too. So you don't have to worry about do I have to read 1 million books? You don't. But I promise you, Trinity Crisis, for example, you read it, it will add a lot for your. It's a lot of fun, and also there's a lot of supplementary material in that book story-wise that will make your reading experience better. And if you read the other 2, I've read them and they're awesome. So, we were really proud of how we did the original Metal that way, where we really didn't feel like we put out anything we weren't super solid on, and it didn't interrupt the line that much. And here we're trying to do the same thing. So we're not even interrupting your books. We're doing specials. And then when we get to November, December, we might interrupt your books a little bit, but it'll still be big, fun stuff. And the same thing, it'll be mostly specials, probably really big specials, because the consequences and everything we're doing at the end of metal are really big. Death metal are really big, but you know, it's up to you guys. If the sales are, you know, are modest, or you're feeling more like it seems like you're not responding to supplemental material, then we'll keep it tight. And if you're really into it, then we'll blow it out and be crazy. But I mean, the sales for the first one were nuts, so I really did not expect that. And DC we're all really conservative. You know, we've tried not to be too out there, you know, pushing stuff. Especially, I mean, these last few weeks, you know, really want to let other people speak about what's important and not be focused on, you know, pushing comics right now. But even before that, with COVID and everything, we wanted to be sensitive to the idea that, you know, we're struggling, and we want to give you something fun, and we want to celebrate that, and we want to help shops, but we don't want to be dicks and be like talking about, you know, comics right and left and buy this and buy that, when there's a lot of things to pay attention to that are important right now. So anyway, point being, we want it to be something that is flexible in that regard and reacts to the moment and reacts to what you guys want. So if you do and you're into it and you like it, then there'll be a lot of tie-in material there. But yeah, I mean, the sales were about double what we were hoping for the first one. So we're really excited about it and grateful to people for showing up. And we want to reward you by making you feel like you're getting more than your money's worth every page. So a lot happening in it.
I think it's very cool. Now, Death Metal 1, is it next week, right? Next Wednesday?
Yeah. It's Wednesday. Yeah. So it's so strange, because it really was like, I think it doesn't feel dated already, but it was very much written when we were totally closed down, you know, and it was written as a kind of like, we'll see each other again. We'll all get to do this, you know, thing that we call comics, and all its kind of different, multifaceted, you know, sort of versions, whether it's cons or, you know, signings or all of it, like together again at some point. So, you know, we'll see. It feels like a million years ago already, but it's you know, it's hopefully people will dig it.
I suppose I'm going to have to ask, because it's been less than a week since DC and Diamond parted ways, and we're still trying to figure out the details of that. I had a conversation with a Chicago retailer, my buddy Pat Brower from Challengers Comics.
Oh yeah, Challengers, yeah.
There you go, and a couple other podcasters, and also Rich Johnson, you know, from Bleeding Cool. Yeah, and Rich brought up a good point in terms of what's going to happen to the UK. Because, I mean, that's the tough thing. I mean, obviously, North America is being served by these two new distributors, and, you know, that is what it is. But, yeah, I guess, you know, any thoughts on the current status quo?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could speak more to it. I mean, I'm getting all the same questions you are, especially because I have Death Metal coming out.
Sure.
I haven't had the conversation with Bob or Jim yet about what the answers to those things are. I can just say that I know, knowing where they were in terms of how they're thinking about DC and you know, what they wanted to do in general a month ago, 2 months ago, not about Diamond, but about the plan for making sure that stores are healthy and trying to strengthen the line and all of that. They're definitely very concerned and passionate about the health of the industry, and I'm sure nothing is being done without a lot of consideration and thought. In terms of the implications of it, I can't speak to it because I just don't know. I honestly, I just don't know. Like, I know as much as you do, and I haven't been in those rooms, but you know, hopefully, I mean, if I knew more, I'd tell you. But I'm looking forward to having those conversations and learning more about the logistics of it and how it's going to work, because I'm getting all the same questions and have a lot of them too.
Okay, and one other question literally just came to mind, and I'll see what you say about it and stuff. The 5G plan, is that still a thing, or is that being changed into something else? I mean, again, I don't know how much you can comment on that, but I'll throw it out.
I mean, I don't know how much is like kosher to talk about that, but what I'd say is that, definitely a lot of the plans that I think were there initially have changed. For me, I was always in the bubble of doing death metal, and because death metal was set up so long ago, it has kind of a lever at the end that you pull and then allows DC to kind of do what they want to do regardless, because it's playing with these cosmic energies that some of which are connective and look at continuity as one epic generational story, and some of which are disruptive. And so it kind of gives you as an editor or publisher the reins to kind of use it as you will. It ends on a note that's very clear about where it stands, about what it wants in terms of what it thinks makes the best kind of line. So I'm proud of how it kind of articulates its own passions, but it's not really, it doesn't kind of end and then it gives you something that will necessarily be, it never did that. And with some of the stuff that was 5G, I don't know if it was ever officially called that, but whatever, the thing that was being planned on the other side, there were elements of it that I thought were strong, and there were elements that I wasn't into, but ultimately it was more like I wasn't a part of that because I was just doing this. So there were times where we were at odds with that, where there were things that were asked of death metal that we couldn't do because I didn't want to change what we were doing to sort of power something that we weren't talking about, like it wasn't our thing. And then there were times where we were totally out of the loop and it almost looked like we were going to end up out of continuity with it, which was fine, So it was definitely a roller coaster. I know that a lot of people were very passionate about the things they were planning with that, and none of it was done in like bad faith. But yeah, I mean, I think the plans on the other side have evolved a lot. So one of the things that is exciting for us is that as much as that wasn't something that we really were part of, we're still supportive, like I was never going to go out there and be like, no, I'm not, this isn't, I was never going to write something that then would be, I'm replaying a lot in my head, so forgive me for being so, I'm not trying to be cryptic. I'm trying to sort of be honest is what it really is. And I think that there were definitely times where there were things that we were writing that I was adamant about keeping that would have made us feel like we were totally out of sync with what was coming. And then there were times where it kind of almost lined up. So what I'm happy about now is that I think what's on the other side of it is much more a conversation between editorial and us, and
good,
much more a plurality of ideas, which is interesting because before it was definitely kind of a more singular vision. And, it might have been awesome. It might have worked great. I don't know. It just wasn't, it wasn't something that I knew how to connect to be honest. And I just felt like it was, I would have been supportive of DC at that point, but it was almost like I didn't know how to connect what we were trying to do and say, which we'd been planning forever, to that always. Some days it almost kind of plugged in and some days it didn't. So it was a long and kind of bumpy road, I think. But ultimately, the way that the environment has changed, we're very much a part of building what's on the other side, and trying to support, I think, some of the great editorial initiatives that are being planned in that regard. So I'm excited. I'm excited. It's still fluid. Like there's still things that I know. There's things that I know are coming on the other side that I think are going to be really cool. And then there are things that we're still playing with and brainstorming because we still have time. It's almost a year away, or 8 months, 9 months away from where we are now. So we got time. So it's an interesting moment, And Jim is a really great leader, and I think Bob is, Bob. I get along really well with Bob too, and so I'm interested. I'm interested to see where it goes. Like I'm very I'm very sort of hopeful about what they're building right now.
Cool. Well, hey man, honestly, I appreciate the nuanced answer that you gave there, man. And truly I can appreciate again, like editorial makes their decisions and you work in a shared universe. Everybody knows that as far as people who work at DC and Marvel. And yeah, you got to be a good soldier if you want to play with the toys basically and stuff. And I'm glad that it sounds like, you guys have all reached a compromise or whatever in terms of whatever the next direction is. Your stories fit in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So no, I think, this is going to be very bold. And I mean, really, again, the combination of COVID and now, and also, Dan DiDio leaving and everything. And obviously there've been some big changes since then. So it's going to be
in a while. I was on a whale boat when I heard about that. It was crazy.
Really?
I was like, yeah, and maybe like, let's just be honest. I mean, Dan, I'm responsible, for my career. Like Dan is really the one that gave me a chance when I had 1 issue or 2 of American Vampire on all of Detective Comics, and let me use Jock and Francesco Francavilla when Mark Bagley was the artist at the time. And
wow,
I know, and I mean, Mark Bagley is I love Mark Bagley, and I adore him. But the Black Mirror, I knew what I wanted to do, and I thought that I'd only get 1 chance ever to write 1 story in comics, and then I'd probably never get another shot. I know. I mean, the way that it was, like, I just always proceed. I still do it, but I mean, not now. I understand. I have like more of a career here, but for years it was always like, you're gonna get 1 shot and do 1 story, and then they're gonna pick somebody else to do it, and that's fine. And it's not a rebuke of you. It's like you have to keep changing it up. And there weren't, I didn't expect a long run. I just thought that that's the way it was. It was like a year and you're off. And so, I mean, with Black Mirror, I mean, I went in there like, I know they were like, are you seriously trying to say that you as a novice who's never worked with anybody, you don't want to work with Mark Bagley on this, And I was like, he's one of my favorites. I love him. I want to work with him on everything except this 1 story. And he was already looking at other things too. So it wasn't like I, didn't work. There were other things that were more attractive than working with like a newbie like me. So it all worked out. But Dan gave me that chance to really do what I wanted on that book, and then gave me the chance with Court of Owls. And don't get me wrong, I mean, we had our like knockdown legendary drag out fights, and I look back at some of those things and I'm like, I can't believe the things that I said or did at times. I wasn't a great guy those first years in terms of controlling my temper with him in particular, because I always felt like there was part of me that I think it was, what it was, John, honestly, it was like that, it was really only with him. I mean, it was like me and Dan had this weird relationship where I felt like I was kind of daring him to fire me, mostly because I felt grossly unprepared to be where I was at that time. I mean, I've only ever wanted to do this, but I didn't know how to be a comic writer. And I went all the way through college, like trying to be a comic book writer artist, because I thought that's how you were a comic book writer. It was like if you drew your own stuff, like Mike Mignola or Todd McFarlane or Frank Miller, like you found your way in because you made your stuff. I didn't know how to break in as a writer. And then when I wasn't good enough as an artist in college, I realized I fell into writing. But this is what I always wanted to do. And Batman has always been my favorite character. So to get Detective Comics for 12 issues immediately with front and back, when I had only had a couple comics under my belt, I mean, it's the break of a lifetime. And yet I also spent that year, panic attacks right and left, like anxiety all over the place, like just really? Like real, I've always had it, but like real anxiety about it, where I was like, I was pretty self-destructive at times. And then with Batman, the first couple of years, I mean, when you learn it's Batman #1, and it was, it was that, I could focus entirely on work and be really strong about it. But there was part of me that almost wanted somebody to kick me off the book because I was so scared all the time of screwing it up. You know what I mean? And so Dan was always that person that would come in and just challenge me on things in ways that sometimes I think were really helpful, and sometimes he was like me. He was like lashing out about stuff. And so we'd have these fights, And you know, and we're still close. Like I love Dan to death, and he's, you know, so there's nothing but good feelings there. But yeah, it's funny because I think he forced me at a certain point to really grow up. And, you know, I've been, don't get me wrong, like I wasn't like a total nightmare, you know, all over the place. But I mean, with him in particular, he forced me at a certain point, I think, also to sort of to learn how to be a better, you know, just to accept that this was it. Like I was gonna do this, and, you know, I couldn't keep trying to sort of dare somebody to kick me out, you know, in some way in that regard. So, you know, there was a moment, I'll tell you what it was. Like now I'm like, it's late and I'm like, I'm not, you know, I have the babies and that stuff, so I'm not used to getting to talk like this. So forgive me if I'm like going off the rails. But
I think people appreciate what you're saying right now, Scott. That, you know, you talk as comfortable as you feel, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you the honest truth. Like the moment I realized I needed to chill out in terms of like my sort of like, it's my way with, and I believe me, like I'm really proud of my relationships with my editors, and Mark Doyle was the first guy that I ever worked with, is still one of my closest friends, and Marie Javins, you know, and you know, yeah, definitely I can be a nightmare, and I know I've made some mistakes at times in terms of, you know, being demanding or whatever it is. But it was with Dan, it was like New York, and it was right in like 2013, so it was quite a while ago. And this is when I like turned it around. But it's like it was a New York Comic-Con. I was with my wife, and we were at the DC party, and I just was so mad at Dan because he kept changing. He was changing things, and he could do that. He would be like erratic about stuff sometimes, not erratic, but impulsive.
Okay.
And he changed some stuff with Superman Unchained about dates, and I was so upset because he had told me he wouldn't do it, and I was just so stressed out because I was so nervous having a Superman book and a Batman book at the same time that I went over to him and was at the party, and I'm talking to him, and I'm getting more and more upset because he's getting upset at me, and I'm like going back and forth, and like, you know, I was like, you know, and another thing, Dan, da 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 da, and yeah, I didn't notice like all these people were watching, you know, and I wasn't like screaming my head off, but I was like, you know, he's the boss, and you're like talking to him.
Sure.
And anyway, it was over, you know, and I kind of said something as I left. I was like, fine, whatever, you know. And I went from that party to the Marvel party with my, you know, friends and my wife, and I got to the Marvel party, which was only like across town by what, like 10 blocks or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
know. Whatever that place is, McHale's or wherever it is. I don't remember what the name is.
But, I think I know. Yeah, the place that CV takes everybody and stuff every con year. I know what you're talking about. Absolutely, man.
And by the time I got there, I walked in and people were like, did you just get into a physical fight with Dan DiDio? They all knew that I had an argument with him, even though it was just an argument. They all had morphed into this rumor that like I had gotten into this crazy fight with him. And so it was Tom Brevoort made a comment to me too, which I'll always appreciate, where he you know, I didn't know him that well, but he shopped at the same comic store I do out here. So I had seen him a bunch of times, both before and after I broke into the industry. And he was always very nice to me. And he said something to me where he was just like, you've got to start being more careful. You know, you're gonna blow your career up. And it was then that I really remember just being like, I have to stop acting like this is I have to stop acting like I'm an imposter. I mean, that's the way I felt. You always feel that way. You know what I mean? Like it's imposter syndrome, and you're like, you get so tired of feeling stressed out about it that you kind of just want somebody to call you out and just get you out of there. But it was really eye opening, and I remember talking to my wife and just being like, I have to just like stop like fighting with Dan so much and all this stuff. And, you know, so we had our arguments since, but, you know, he was always very supportive of me in the long run. So yeah, as much as I feel like there were a lot of rumors that, you know, he and I parted ways or like that over, you know, 5G stuff and all of that was not true at all. Like I would have, we had creative differences, but like there were things I did, like, he wasn't behind some of the stuff that we did, like Metal. There was no secret about that. He wasn't behind the first one. But then once he still supported it and let us do it exactly the way we wanted. And, he was our biggest fan once it got going, and he was great in that regard. So, I mean, it was always that. It was like,
that's cool.
So same way back, meaning like if I might not be into something he had planned, but I'd always support him and respect his vision in that regard too. So I don't know. That's how that was.
No, hey man, again, I appreciate the candor, and I think a lot of us can relate. Hey man, when I was in my 20s, I was given a manager job at my radio station, and I was not the nicest guy in the world. And I look back and it's like, and luckily figured out, okay, everything doesn't have to be a battle. You move on. So, I mean, seriously, I mean, that's a common story. I think when people are given a level of, if not power, just appreciation for what they're doing. And again, you got, hey man, like Black Mirror was huge. It was fantastic.
Thanks.
And then, I mean, really, and then it was the domino effect. I mean, you went from that to Court of Owls, and geez, every time, I mean, Court of Owls was such a fresh idea, and now it is so ingrained in the Batman mythos, and you got to feel great about that, man.
Oh yeah, I feel amazed at all of it, like that I got the chance to do any of it, and to see, any of the stories like show up somewhere else. Like when somebody uses the Batman Who Laughs or James Jr. or any of that stuff, it makes my whole month. Just to see that it's kind of it's like traveling from just our stuff to somebody else's, whether it's in comics or anywhere. I mean, I still can't get over it. I mean, if you told me like I got to write Batman for that long and I'm still working on these characters, I mean, it's a dream job. I wake up. It sounds hokey, but it's the truth. I mean, I try very hard now to, make sure that everything I'm doing speaks to that. Like when you read death metal, I mean, you'll see like it's definitely a love letter to all the sort of stories that I grew up adoring, and also thank you to everybody who lets me do this, but still kind of crazy and personal in its own way too. So I hope
that's awesome. Do you want to show? We've got it set up where you can show some images. I don't know if you wanted to show those or not.
Sure, they'll probably kill me. The images I have are actually from the second one.
It's your call. It's your call, Scott. I don't want to get you in trouble. That's this isn't a gotcha platform at all, buddy. So it's up to you.
Let me see if I have what I should show.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, why don't you? If you want to isolate something.
Coil here is terrible.
Everyone's like, "You jerk, John! What are you doing? Let him show it." So hey,
all
man,
right.
no.
Here,
that one?
Yeah, why not? Go ahead.
Okay, because I think I saw you put this on Twitter earlier, right?
Yeah. So this is from issue 2, actually, and it's can you see my whole thing? Can you see this, which is hugely embarrassing?
Like if you don't have pants on, we can't tell. So no, we just we see the main.
What it says is that I have 7,000 unread emails in my inbox.
Oh no, not at all. No, all we see is the image right now.
Oh, okay, awesome. I have my tab is my Gmail tab, Twitter, and this. So I didn't know, but it says on my Gmail 7,145 emails. So
you can delete mine because I was just making sure that you were connecting. Okay. Right before I saw that you had connected.
Yes, I'm super organized. Anyway, so this is from issue 2 actually, and this is a moment when Diana has convinced Bruce, who was had a very different plan of how to attack the Batman Who Laughs, to join her. He's riding a bike made from a Joker dragon, and he essentially has. He is an army of the dead. So he's raised Jonah Hex as his lieutenant. So he has Jonah Hex with him, who kind of has some very tender moments in this, which I enjoyed writing because I always was a fan of what Jimmy and Justin did with him. And Swamp Thing is functioning as Wonder Woman's shield. And they're running away from Dr. Arkham, who's one of the evil Batmen, who's what if Bruce Wayne ran Arkham and sort of driven crazy by its labyrinthian kind of menace and so on, and developed these strange bat gargoyle creatures that are all based on him. So they're all like these horrifying, almost like baby mutant bat things. And so they're being chased by them, and Barry is helping them, and they're trying to get to this bunker, and they're in the nuclear wastelands. which are an area of the South that was destroyed when Captain Atom was blown up by the Batman Who Laughs, and so that's where Harley kind of gets her mutant hyena, she's writing, and you can go down a little bit if you want. I don't know how much I should show, just a tiny bit. Can I do it or you? Do it?
You have control, son.
Oh, whoa.
So awesome. Here, oops, there we go.
Sorry, I do.
Or do you want to set it up and then?
So if I show it here, this is what's happening.
I've taken it out of the pictures, but you can scroll any spoiler-esque images you don't want to show.
I love how Greg is so expressive with Bruce, right? So that's Bruce.
Hold on. Okay, we can put it back in now if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, there it is.
That's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But an evil Bruce Wayne shooting at them, trying to guard this bunker. And then the hyena eats him, which I love.
Awesome. Great. Do you want me to hide it again, or are you ready?
No, you can go for a sec. Why not, right? And they go down into the bunker, and Wonder Woman uses her awesome lasso, and they see the Dark Knights.
Hilarious.
Which is cool. I don't know. I can't go to the next page because it super spoils something.
Okay, I'll take it off.
But I'll tell you one more page if you want.
You set it up, and when you're ready, that's fine. I will tell you, I've enjoyed the various.
I'll show you one more page.
All right, I've enjoyed the various iterations of Batman. I enjoyed Grim Batman very much.
Yeah, check this one out. So
there you go.
This is the Atom Batman. So I really like. He's evil too. They're all evil. So this is like an homage to the beginning of the first Metal, where the lizard crawls across the desert, and here it's like Sergeant Rock is talking over it, and he's like talking to you directly because he narrates the whole series, and you catch up to him in issue 5. You see why he's narrating it, but he's narrating it to you, and he's like, "There you are, come back up to the front lines, kid." You know, and he's talking about how battles are won by taking things like hill by hill, actually like blade of grass by blade of grass. You have to think small, you know, you don't think big, and then it's like zip, and then he's in there, and he's like, you know, he's talking to the Batman Who Laughs, and he's like, "My lord," he's like, "It's Batum." He's like, come in. You know, I'm looking around, but there's no sign of them. And then all of a sudden, he gets run over by a giant monster truck. And then
monster truck, yes.
Yeah, it's the first chapter. It's called Attack of the Mutant Ferns, and that's it. And that's the first chapter. You'll see why it's called that later. This is Swamp Thing stuff, but this is also a sentient evil Batmobile, so it's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
That's the one that Daniel Warren Johnson did stuff for. So.
Now, I hope, like people are asking Red Death. They're all like shocked to see Red Death in the story.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of Speed Metal, so you're gonna he's really there. I try.
Okay.
I just as a warning. I know I teased the. I can turn this off now.
I'll take it down. That's all good, buddy.
There you go. I know I teased some of the Dark Knight stuff, but we really wanted to move away from the originals. They make appearances, so don't get me wrong. But we don't want to repeat ourselves. I wanted it to be something that felt brand new, but in the spirit of the same thing.
Sure.
So you will see like Red Death, and Speed Metal really picks up some of that stuff. And then you will see like some of the other original Dark Knights and Grim Knight and that stuff as we get farther into the story. But we wanted it to be like not just 5 Batman this time, but like a world that's oppressing you that you just can't. There's no hope. I wanted it to feel like you're just like, there is no way to win back the world. And that's Batman's attitude in it, which I really enjoy writing, where something happened to him, which I won't give away, but he just feels like they have to save who they can and get to an Earth they can make in the dark and hide in the dark. And Wonder Woman feels like there has to be a way to get everything back, to change everything back and use the big cosmic forces that they've uncovered because of Doomsday Clock to change the world back to the way it was. And Batman just says, every time we try that, we lose. Like we need to just accept it and go small. And so that's kind of the running argument through the first couple issues.
That's awesome, man. No, it's I'm excited for the story, and truly, it's been very interesting watching the story go from Metal to all the stuff you did in Justice League and everything, and all those great one shots as well of explaining the various Batman and the alternate versions of the Justice League and everything. And I mean, yeah, that really has to be kind of perverse is the wrong word, but a vicarious thrill to kind of like look at these origins and find these great moments of turning characters around and stuff like that. I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, the Dark Multiverse, to me, I always was hoping to be able to add something like that to the DC lore, because I was such a big fan of like Elseworlds and such a fan of What If, and it's so difficult to do those stories given the kind of rigidity of the line, rightly so, meaning like you shouldn't be able to do it. But if you can create a place that's where everybody's worst fears exist in perpetuity, and they're always there, and they're always evolving into different things, it gives this endless sort of source of creative, possibility, I think. So there's a lot of that in this, where you see dozens of versions of Batman, but also other characters and crises and all kinds of things. So I love threatening the characters with how easy it could be for things to go completely wrong the other way. And one of the things I'd say to people too is I know there's always a worry that like, because it looks dark, I mean, it looks dark that it's like a dark story, but I mean, Metal was the same, and so is most of the stuff we do, me and Greg, where we want the world to be dark around the heroes in a way that's fun and sensational and out of control. So it doesn't read, I don't think it reads dark, but it's more that one thing I would just assure people, the heroes are never dark. I mean, that's the thing that to me sinks it, is when the heroes act out of character and are darker than they should be, regardless of the way the world is. And here are the heroes, I'm proud of how they kind of react to things by being still as hopeful as they ever were, if not more. So there's a brightness and a I think I don't know, an energizing like optimism to it, even though there's almost no reason on the surface to be optimistic for them.
Well, and it's nice to have a more complicated story where things don't wrap up necessarily in 6 issues. And I think your Justice League run, the way it ended and stuff, and that's like, guess what? They lose this time. And it's like, that's... I mean,
that was a really hard decision. Also, like, and I'm like, there were times I called James Tynion up, he's like my guru, former student, now teacher, you know what I mean?
Interesting. Sure.
And I was like, oh, did I totally screw this one up? You know what I mean? Because I was like, the only way to get to the place I need for death metal has always been for them to lose. But am I not doing the right thing by not putting like a button on my Justice League run, by having them win? Because the first idea, I'm telling you the truth, the first idea was to have them win and then cut to death metal and be like, oh, but all this stuff happened off screen and you didn't see it and they lost. And again, and my worry about that was that it would feel manufactured. And on top of that, the story was planned for them to lose. And then I've never, like everything, and maybe this goes back to like what we were saying earlier, so forgive me but when I started, I really did have that idea I told you about earlier, where I was like, I'm going to get thrown off these fucking books like fast. So, or, I got to do one story and out. So if you look at my early stuff, like it's always one arc, totally contained, and then out. And then I never used that stuff again. And it wasn't until Death of the Family where I had a second story that was Endgame in mind, but I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get to do it. So I might as well kind of put a button on this one. And then when I got to after that, and Dan was the one that was like, you have time, like just chill out and start to make things roll forward. I realized, okay, I'll do that. I can get to Endgame. I'm going to do 0 Year. I'm going to do this and make a big thing. All of that was like, was baby steps. And so with Justice League, what I really wanted to do was try to do the kind of thing that I admire so much that like John Hickman does and other people, where it's like a long, sort of really expansive run that doesn't always, have these total one and done sorts of set pieces. It's a rolling cumulative epic. So that was the idea, was to do something that would be almost like Justice League, Justice League, Justice League, and then it goes higher into Year the Villain and Ha, or at the very least goes into death metal if you just read it that way. So I wanted to try that, so I feel it was that. But it's always like, you never know, like if you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I mean, that's just the truth, with it. But
sure,
the only time I know I'm doing the wrong, I'm telling you that what felt wrong about the other way was I knew I could pull it off easy. It would have gotten me like the applause and you know what I mean? Like it's the same feeling when you're getting to Batman 50, like on my part, and I was just like, I could do this for another 3-4 years easily. Like I have I had Scarecrow story I wanted to do. I had, a Penguin story and all this stuff. But it was just like you can feel it when it's getting too familiar, where it's like I know how to do that, or I could do it and maybe I'd learn something, but I'd learn a lot more by trying something very different than what I'm doing. By going from that and doing like After Death, or doing All-Star Batman in a completely different format, at least, where it's like or doing at that time whatever it was, Witches, or trying to always zigzag. So now, like right now, that's always the compass, So if I have death metal, then I'm working on these indie things, like both Undiscovered Country, but also some of the stuff that I'm going to announce soon.
Yeah.
If I'm doing another DC project that's smaller, then I'm doing bombastic indie stuff to test different muscles. So I have books coming up that are part prose, and other ones that are historical fiction, but comics, and then other ones that are, total over the top, like adventure, horror, like you're used to from big summer blockbuster type fun stuff. So it's just that. It's trying to make sure that you're always your own favorite writer in terms of challenging yourself. So I don't know. You know what I mean? Like that.
I do, man, because I'll tell you, you say like you're going to do something where it's comics and prose. I think of what you did with Lemire, AD, and everything.
Like that. With Jock. So I'm excited.
That's awesome, man. No, that's terrific. Hey, and I'll, if I may, one thing about Endgame, I don't know if we ever talked about it, that conversation that Bruce Wayne and the Joker have on the park bench.
Oh yeah, and Super Heavy. That's right. That's one of my favorite things I ever wrote in my life.
That's amazing. Yeah. That was a fantastic moment, man. And just, Thanks. I mean, again, it's those real moments between a hero and a villain that do really know each other in a way that nobody else does. And obviously that notion evolved with the Batman Who Laughs and everything from his origin to the realization of now the two characters being merged into one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I loved, was that the thing with the Joker that I was getting sort of like, just a bit, I think, constrained by, was that our version of him was always existed in relation to Batman. He was about, he's in every story I did in some capacity, even if only in passing, like in Super Heavy or in Court of Owls. But he haunts the whole thing, like the whole run.
Sure.
Because he's very much, when I was doing Batman, he embodied all the kind of worst voices in my head. So, for example, when I did it's like what I do with Batman, or any hero really, is you try and take something that you're struggling with, or that you're hopeful about or fearful of, and then you pick, what hero would be the best hero to go up against that fear, given their own fears, so that it would be potent for them. And, so when I'm on Batman, I'm trying to think of what things am I really afraid of that might scare him too. And so like with Death of the Family, for example, that was really, we were pregnant with our second kid, Emmett. And it was like, well, what if I'm a bad father this time? You see it in Witches too, right?
Sure.
Like, what if like, I'm my career is starting, the career I've always wanted is just starting. Like, what if I don't have enough time for this kid? What if deep down I don't want another kid? Like, all these terrible thoughts that you don't want to admit you have, and they're real, but like your real feeling deep down is, of course you want, this is what you wanted, and but those anxieties and those fears are real, and and yeah. You have those dark notes in who you are. That's just it. And so for me, like Joker coming in and saying, "Oh, Batman, you've developed this whole family." I hear you in your head saying maybe you don't want them deep down because they make you slower and vulnerable to me and other villains. Well, so I'll kill them for you and do you a favor, because deep down you want to go back to being just you and me and young. And so that was, that was very personal in that regard. And so Joker always was that. So in Endgame, he's articulating my fears when I've gone through depression, right? Where he says, everything you do, everything you thought you were, everything you thought mattered that you do means nothing. And then as you start to argue with him, he's like, no, and just drowns you out with what he's saying over and over. Oh, really? You think that? Well, let me counter-argue that. You're going to look over there? Well, the world becomes like a series of funhouse mirrors, and that's why the Joker toxin, it's infecting everyone Bruce looks at as a failure to him, So that the Joker, though, still, for me, was always about proving something to Batman, proving this kind of nihilistic vision of the world that just says, I laugh at the idea that you think your actions mean anything. They mean nothing. But take Batman out of that equation, and our version is kind of lost. He's scary and as the devil to him. But Batman Who Laughs, to me, isn't trying to prove anything. I love him because he's the Joker, but he's free of he's not the Joker. He's Bruce. He's Bruce with like a sociopathic, evil mind.
Yeah.
And Bruce, when you remove all kind of ethics, all he cares about is winning. He's like, surviving and winning and being the apex predator. So he is so evil. He's worse than the Joker because he has no vulnerabilities. There's no empathy or anything. And if you see him coming, he's already thought of all the ways to kill you that Batman would think of to save you. So it's like he's just this terrible reflection. And he's deeply fun to write that way because all the times that you've written Batman being this guy you can always get through and always like save you in the right way or save the city, this guy has just as many plans to do the worst things possible. So I love writing him. He's a blast to write. He is a very I think people will be surprised by how he figures in death metal too. It's fun because when he steps on stage, his first lines when you see him where he's like, I know, you're sick of me. He's talking to the heroes and that stuff. He's like, but you're here. You know what I mean? He's a lot of fun.
That's hilarious.
He sees what you think. He knows what you're thinking is the idea. He's Batman.
Sure.
He's that. So I love reminding people that he's Bruce Wayne in that way too, because that's what makes him scary. When he sees Alfred, and he's like, remember that time when I was a boy and we did and you're like, oh yeah, he's Bruce, So.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man, and I agree with you, and that is what makes him dangerous and scary, and also that's very meta, and I love it because that's like what Jeff did with Superboy Prime. I like that, and also Rock. By the way, I'm a massive Sergeant Rock fan, and it's ridiculous. I literally was talking about him on a podcast yesterday, on a sports podcast of all things. But the guy brought up, he's like, I love Sergeant Rock, the sports host, and I'm like, hey man, I'm totally with you, Joe Kubert and Kanigher.
Fun. He's like, and doing his voice here, it's like my version, but still, where he's like, this is what we're gonna do, kiddo. We're gonna get up there, and we're gonna, and he's got it says rock on his helmet and those big things, and it's metal, and he's like, he's just yelling at you. It's really fun, No,
that's awesome.
The whole speech, until the last minute, they left all this swearing in it and the lettering, and I was like, is this gonna pass through? And not that I would want it to for teens, but it was pretty funny because I wrote it just as I was thinking it, and then I knew it would get edited down.
Okay.
It was like he's talking about like this scenario where he's like, because it was COVID, and he's kind of like, you're at the drive-through. He's like, it's like you're at the drive-through, and you get like you luck out, and you get one of them fancy buns with your burger, and it shows up, and you take a bite, and it's a goddamn turd. It's a turd burger, and he's like, and them fries, they're curly turd, and he's going on this whole screed about it, and but it had bad language and
hilarious
until the last minute. And I was like really amazed. I couldn't believe that just seeing that on the page. And I was, I would have changed it. I would never let it go out to kids that way. But it was. There's a version in my heart.
Now that inspires another question, and believe me, it not just for the sake of being able to use swear words, but are there Black Label ideas that you have that we might see in the future?
Yeah. I actually have a pitch in for a Nightwing one, so I'm excited.
Oh,
I always wanted to go back to Dick Grayson and do something with him, and so it's a really grounded kind of mystery, but it also gives you kind of a statement. It's kind of why I think he's a very different detective than Batman, or better in a certain way than in one aspect of in one kind of mystery than Batman. There's than Bruce. I mean, it really has to do with him being somebody who understands human emotion and the most empathetic character in the Bat family in that regard, in that way too. And it's a mystery that kind of only he can solve. So I'm really, really happy with it as a kind of thing. But that, and yeah, I mean, I love Black Label. Again, Mark was the first guy who ever, hired me. He is so weird. We were just joking about this. I'm talking to him tomorrow morning, actually. And I was just talking to him about this, where I was like, the way I broke into comics was, I was working on this novel, and I was like, I had a contract to do this novel after I'd done these short stories, and I was working on it, and I didn't realize when I sold it that most of the money comes at the end because I was an idiot and I was young.
Oh, jeez.
And I had this great relationship with the publisher when it came to the stories. And so when I was sold the novel, I was like, oh, here's the idea. It'll be a breeze. And then the economy began to contract. This is like, 2007, 2008. And everything was like a mess. And it became clear that the only way that this book was really going to go through is if it was like a really good and a big hit. And the pressure of that, when we had just bought a house, and because I had thought we had money, and my wife was a student, in graduate school, I was like, how have I completely screwed up our lives? And it was just miserable, where I was like working on this book, trying to add in like action and romance, and it didn't have that kind of stuff. It was about a barnstormer. It's actually, not to totally ruin things, but it's what the basic idea is one of the comics I'm about to do now. So I'm taking it and using it in a different way. But anyway,
interesting.
Yeah, it's historical fiction. I love that era. So anyway, the
Barnstormer, like the Great Waldo Pepper, one of my favorite record movies.
I used to have the poster from that on my
That's
wall.
awesome. There you go.
The old Curtis Jennings and the whole idea of like just sleeping under the wing, traveling from place to place in decommissioned planes. I mean, I love that stuff. So
sure.
We live near an aviation museum actually, and they have some of the old planes there, like back to the Linen Wings ones, to the Jennings and the,
wow.
It's beautiful. Because the Grumman airfield was nearby where they manufactured them.
Holy shit!
So as I was working on that book, it was just misery because it wasn't their fault. The publisher was great, but I knew I wasn't going to deliver it. Like it wasn't going to be a bestseller, and if it wasn't a bestseller, they probably weren't going to take it. In my mind, that's what I thought because the economy wasn't there anymore for it. So I was like, what am I doing? And a buddy of mine, Owen King, he asked me if I wanted to be in this anthology he was working on because we were both huge comic fans. We used to go to Midtown and Forbidden Planet together. And he was like, I'm going to do an anthology of stories, just a small book. He got funding to do it. It was like literary writers make up their own superheroes. And so a lot of them were like jokes, like fun, but jokes like, a superhero who he like goes to a support group for superheroes with terrible powers, and like his is that he never has to go to the bathroom and that's it. And it's just like, where does it all go? And that was like the whole thing. But it was like, mine was like really, I took it really dark, and it was all about the Bikini Atoll tests and a guy who develops powers because he's too close to that. And anyway, I threw myself into this story, and I remember my wife being like, why are you doing this short story when if you just write this novel, like we can afford our house and that? And I'm like, I totally am writing a novel, but I'm so miserable. And I just want, like, give me 1 week to write the story because it's just, I just want to have fun. I don't remember what it's like to have fun writing anymore. And she was like, go ahead, do it. So I wrote it. And then Mark Doyle came with Janine Schaefer. At the time they were dating and I didn't realize it. And then I started working for both of them and didn't realize they were dating. And it was the weirdest thing because one of them would ask me like, how's it working at Marvel? And I was like, it's great, but I could use some more notes sometimes from editor. And then I get notes and I was like, wow, that's weird. I'm not Batman when it comes to like the work. But he came to the thing and he asked if any of us were real comic fans, and I had comics in my bag, and I was like, I'm a real comic fan, and he was like, oh, I liked your story. Do you want to pitch? And Janine asked the same thing. And so, I pitched, and next thing was he had me do American Vampire as a pitch, and that was the way I broke in. So, yes, I don't even remember how I began this story, so I apologize. Like I don't remember if I had a point beyond how I broke in.
Well, I'm glad you told it. To be honest, Scott, all detours are welcome. Don't worry about it, honestly, man.
But wait, I don't want to skip your question. What was the original one? Or was there one?
I don't know if there was one. Well, I mean, we talked about the Joker and the Batman distilling into one being and everything. Yeah. And forgive me. I mean, I really enjoyed the story. I wish I honestly, I'm not sure how we arrived on that, but I'm glad you told me.
I don't remember. But okay. I will segue into this because
talk to me.
Right, bear on a tricycle, whatever. But American Vampire is coming back very soon, which I'm very excited about.
Hey, that's awesome, man! Yeah. Fantastic. Like any hard date or
right now? What?
Say again.
We're 3 issues done with it right now.
So it's like
waiting 9 issue arc with one thing, so probably 10 issues.
Wow! So it's not on the schedule yet, but it will be soon.
Yeah, it's not. They could schedule it now. We're literally done with a few of them, but we're gonna just we don't want to have it too rushed. But it's coming out. It will come out this year because it's the 10th anniversary of the series.
Hey, wow,
Yeah,
that's great,
so
man.
by the end of the year, you'll get it. But it's I'm really proud of it. I've been thinking about it forever. It takes place in 1976, and everybody's in it. It's like Skinner is kind of this rundown stuntman, not like a movie stuntman. He like rides a motorcycle.
Like a Daredevil?
We're going to crash and all this stuff. And
okay, like Evel Knievel back in the day, basically?
Yeah, he's kind of like that. And then, it has elements of like all this kind of 70s stuff, like New York in the 70s and the whole kind of paranoia in the government, and it has a Washington, D.C. element at that time. And it brings everyone back. So from Travis to Gus to just everybody. So I'm really happy with it.
That's awesome, man. Fantastic. Yeah. That's great to hear.
My favorite scene in the first issue is like Travis, who's the guy from the 50s arc that had the wooden fangs to bite vampires with. But he's like he's older now, and he's pretty washed up. But he meets up with somebody in a disco, which he hates disco, But he's talking to this guy, and turns out that some of the people in there are vampires. And so he does a thing where it he has a solar thing and it hits the disco ball and like gets a lot of them. And one of them knocks it down and they're like, what are you going to do now? And then he's like pushed them on the lighted floor. It's all solar thing, so it burns them. I love that series so much. I mean, that one, it's probably the thing. My wife asked me the other day, a while ago, but she was like, she's not a huge comic fan. She's always very kind about reading my stuff and she loves reading stuff that's a little off the beaten path. But I like that she's not, she doesn't
sure.
them. She's just not, she didn't grow up on superheroes. And she was like, if I read one thing consistently, what would it be? And I was like, read American Vampire. Because for me, it's like, it has everything that I've ever wanted to write about in one place. It's horror, but it's history and it's all that stuff. So I really love that one. I'm very, very thrilled to be back on it. It was so easy to start writing it again. So there's a lot of surprises about who's coming back in it too. So
that's awesome, man.
At the end of this one, we're going to jump to the present. So you'll see this is the last kind of historical one. Not that we won't do ones in the present that then show you the history, but we're not going to do I don't think we're going to do the 80s and the 90s and that stuff because we just felt it's a little played out and we're, we always wanted to jump from have the end on the bicentennial in terms of the cycle of it. So it's in the bicentennial. And, yeah.
Interesting. Wow, man. No, I think that's great. And I'm glad that you guys are coming back to it and everything. And no, it's a classic Vertigo kind of book that you do want to hand to a non-superhero person and go, this is also comics. Don't judge us all by capes and masks and stuff like that. Hey man, no, absolutely. And I feel that way about Scalped and Sheriff of Babylon, and really, of course, 100 Bullets and everything. No, there's a lot of great stuff.
Oh yeah,
like that.
I just actually I was just looking back at Scalps the other day. That was one of the books that because when I was starting at Vertigo, it was that was at its height. It was like reading that. I was so intimidated reading that book, and to see what Tom and Mitch did with Sheriff of Babylon and how good Vertigo was right up until the end too was great.
Yeah.
So very proud of being a part of that.
No, I don't blame you, man. And again, I understand why everything's under one label now, and that kind of I can appreciate that thinking as well. But I'm glad, and man, it's interesting to hear. I hope your Nightwing Black Label thing happens and stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to do more creator owned too with that. I'm hoping that develops as well over there as well as like a Vertigo within it. I know they're talking about it too, so I'd be fun to see the spirit of Vertigo back too with that stuff.
I hear you, man. We've been going for 90 minutes. Do you want any time for some Elvis talk? I mean, most of the questions we've already.
I feel bad. I had like the most corn maze answers to everything, and I feel like I probably answered one question from your audience.
Well, here we go. So, are we getting some collections of the Ordway run later? What's the Ordway? I don't know about that. They were asking. I know someone was asking if you would ever go to some other characters like Shazam and other things. Here we go. Henry's going to ask from Make the Metal Men.
The metal. Well, Dan is writing that right now, and he's doing a great job, and I love it. So they're taken. Their dance card is full.
I've been into Nightwing ever since Jurgens took over. Utilizing the Court of Owls has been great. Best they've been used since Snyder. That's true. There you go. I'm sorry. I'm literally like scanning through because again, I was just really listening to our conversation, which was just fantastic.
If there's anything, let me see.
I'm looking too. Yeah, you're good because you can. Yeah, you've got access to the chat as well. Here, let's see some new comments. Oh yeah, all right. A lot of requests for Super Sons. I understand.
Yeah, well, I love Jorge, and Jorge is like, I mean, we're good friends, and I hope to work with him again soon. Although he's murdering it on James's Batman, which is going to be great. Joker War, it's really really good. So get excited. I'm so glad to see James on that book. Honestly, he really loves that character so much, and the whole family, as all of you know, from like Eternal and everything. That and Detective is amazing detective run. So I'm glad to see him get a chance to really do it.
There you go. All right, Gore Vidal, not the real one. Mr. Snyder, when you write a story like Death of the Family, do you think about the audience reaction to the story, or you just concern yourself whether the story works regardless of the audience?
I do think about the audience reaction in terms of like in this way. Like I try and be aware of where you are, like because I'm a fan too, right? So when I try and think about like what you would be expecting and where you are in terms of your relationship to DC or your relationship to the characters I'm using, right? So for example, like when I go into death metal, the reason I'm using Sergeant Rock at the beginning and having him talk to you is because I am thinking about you and your reaction to not in a way like think about, oh no, are you gonna think I don't care about you? But to say, I mean, it's not trying to pander to you. Instead, it's saying to you, we are like you, we are fans as well. So I nod at the things that I think, I want to acknowledge, but then I do what I want to do. Like for example, if I have like Jim Gordon, we had Jim Gordon be Batman for a minute. He looked at the camera in the beginning of that story and was like, he was talking to another character, but he's like, all right, this is the dumbest idea in the history of Gotham City. Let's go do this. Where's my Batmobile? So it's the acknowledgement to you that we know you think that it's bad and stupid, and we think that it's bad and stupid, but we also think it's awesome because it's going to let us explore some really new territory in different ways. So similarly, like Zero Year, right? So Zero Year, I got a lot of heat for doing the origin over. I was a lot of yelling and that stuff when I started it, or before I started it. I was really freaked out. I mean, that was a low point, like emotionally.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, because there's something. The other part that was weird was talking about like not gauging fan reaction. The one moment I think on the whole time I was on Batman that I was really sort of surprised was when I did Death of the Family. I knew I was going to do by the end of it a second part, like that was going to be Endgame, because Dan had sort of talked to me about continuing, and I had the second part like tragedy and comedy. The first one was a comedy, the second one was tragedy. He's holding his face, like a lot of it was kind of built in. But I also I'd never done something that tied into multiple books for multiple issues. So I wasn't aware of the kind of cumulative build that comes with doing something that's seen as kind of an event, and the expectation that rises with that something monumental is going to happen at the end. So I wasn't focused on that. The way I do an event, like when I do metal, is you work with people you admire and you trust, and you give them loose parameters, and then you let them try and, unless the story really needs to be something tight, and you warn them about that at the beginning, you try and let them do what they're going to do to make it their story in the best way. So if I'm saying to like, Pete Tomasi, use the Joker and Batman and Robin however you want, but he has to be coming for your character in a really scary way, I'm not really paying attention to, I'm just like, oh, it's amazing Joker content. I'm not getting the sense that if you're buying all of this, there's a drumbeat about something coming at the end, right?
I hear you.
So for me, the idea always was to change the line after that and break the family apart and to possibly take somebody's face, maybe not, I didn't know. But it was like, you know, I didn't really want to do that. It was more like, there was like a debate internally, like, should we do this to somebody or not, or whatever. But the big idea was to break the family up and to have Batman realize that, be really upset by the notion that maybe Joker and he know each other better than any of his family knows him. So it ended. It ended, and I remember like driving back. I had been at this convention in Charlotte with like a DC convention, not a like a private convention thing.
Okay.
Employees, and I'm like in a car driving back, and I saw the reviews, and they were like some of the best I've gotten from my whole career. I was so happy and like pleased, and there was this like wave of, you know, of good response. And so I was like, and this was at the height of my not dealing very well also with the success of Batman. And then I started to see this undercurrent on Twitter that was very angry at me. That was just like, you didn't kill anybody, and I spent all this money on all these books, and it's called Death of the Family, and you didn't kill somebody. You didn't kill Alfred. You didn't kill, you know, any of that. And it really surprised me. And I was very, very shocked. It was the first time I was really like blindsided by not reading the room. You know what I mean? Usually as a fan, and I am. I mean, I really do pride myself on trying to understand where fans are as well at the moment I'm doing something. Sometimes I'm distracted. I had, you know, a lot of family stuff and everything going on. Sure. But I do try and stay basically plugged in, so I'm aware at least of your concerns, your fears, your expectations and your hopes for the characters. So even if I don't want to I don't change what I'm writing at core at all ever to appease that. I'm still going to do what I want to do. But I also, if I understand that it's going to be something that's really asking a lot of you, I try and nod at the things that I know you're worried about and say, don't worry. Like, I see what you're afraid of. It's, you know, it might go there to the place you're afraid of, but I understand what your concerns are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do really try to do that. So 0 Year, for example, by the time I got there, I was like, that came right on the heels of Death of the Family. So it came out, and then it was in that Death of the Family was polarizing in that regard. And then now it's funny because now they read the trade and there's no memory of that. It's more like just read the trade and, you know, whatever.
I got comments I'm going to put up right now for you, Scott, saying that people enjoyed 0 Year very much. And 0 Year, I think, is your best story on Batman. It's great.
It's my favorite. But so the 0 Year thing, I wrote that for my kid. That's for my kids. You know, it's them. It's dealing with a lot of the concerns that I realized they have that I didn't have as a kid. But the transition to that, and then I'll shut up about this. Sorry to go on so long. Is that I was really shaken by that, by not seeing that coming. And so I really recommitted myself to just understanding where fans were later after 0 Year. But when 0 Year was announced, I got double hit because it was like, you're redoing Year One. You know what I mean? Why the hell would you do that? Year One's the best ever. And I kept trying to say, I didn't want to redo Year One. It's the New 52 made it so that Year One couldn't happen. And we're one of the last characters that hasn't done a new origin. And so I want to do one that's written for my kids in a new way. It'll never touch the hem of Year One, but Year One can't be the current origin anymore. So, you know, they want us to do it, and I'd like to try it.
Sure.
But it was very, very, the people did not want to hear it until it came out. But speaking to what they were concerned about was like, I knew going in that I wanted it to be pink and green and like punk rock, over the top, bombastic. If Year One was quiet, I mean, Year One is like claustrophobic and grounded. This was going to be like boom, like you couldn't even compare them. If that was short, this was long. If that was minimalist, this is maximalist. Everything like, you know. And so that's how I'm aware of what you're expecting. And so with like, I knew you guys thought out there that I was going to do the origin, and you're going to go to the alley, and you're going to see the pearls, and you're going to see the whole thing. And so that's why I wanted to start it by being like the origin of Batman and open on Gotham City, and it's post-apocalyptic with like, you know, it looks like I Am Legend, and you're like, what the hell? And Batman rides up on a badass motorcycle, sleeveless, looking like survivalist Batman, and he's like, you don't know what's going on, and then it cuts back to pure action. So that's the way that I can describe it. When I teach my class, I actually try to do a one lesson about this, like one class about it, about making sure that the only way you ever react to fans is to make sure that it's only by way of going farther into the thing you want to do if you acknowledge what they want. Do you know what I mean? If you start changing what you're doing for fans or rewriting it, you're doomed. Like, you're never going to write anything that matters to you. You have to be able to say, they might hate me this time. And I've been on the receiving end of that, and I appreciate it. And I always say the same thing, which is it's because they're passionate about these characters. And it's a kind of love for the characters, not for you,
of course,
but for the characters, and that's great. So, everybody I know has been through it at some point or other in different capacities, but that's it. So that's what I try and say to my students is, like, I think it's a good thing to think about where they are, to acknowledge it in some ways, but only by way of going further towards the thing that you're trying to do. I should do some lightning ones. Let me see.
Scott, everything you're saying about writing, I agree with. Sometimes it's important to provoke the audience and not just give them what they want, but shock them and take them out of their comfort zone. They are worried about the character as much as they are upset about the story. That's a good thing. The
thing I'm proud of the fact that, honestly, like, because I feel like people look back on the Court of Owls or Black Mirror, and now they're older, like they're in the shelf somewhere, not the shelf of greats. I just mean, like, they're on a shelf, like they exist and they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But when we did those stories, like doing a son for Jim Gordon that was a psychopath was people were not happy with me.
No.
And then when I did Bruce possibly having a brother, in Court of Owls, people were not happy, with that. And then, with Joker, the face, when we had his face, we got a lot of heat for having his face stapled onto his face, and people saying we were turning it into Texas Chainsaw and it wasn't. So, there was always, I'm proud of the fact that, even if our run now might seem more accepted or conventional, at the time when we were doing it, there were always elements that we were trying to push, from each thing and make it our own,
I hear you.
Do that, still now I have more free reign to be, stupider, but I like metal. There's nothing more me and Greg than just doing, it has like, Jarro in a prison suit, like Cool Hand Luke, like, like the thing. And it's just, it is so, but it is, I promise it's not just fan fiction. It's about DC. It ties into like Doomsday Clock and Infinite Crisis and Crisis on Infinite Earths and, Final Crisis. And it's a lot of love and lore of DC, but it's just our take on it. So.
Dude, that's fantastic. I honestly, I look forward to it. I hope, man, I'll tell you, you guys have been teasing us with the Justice Society for, with Doomsday Clock and what you did with in No Justice and everything.
Well, I wanted to do a story. I wanted to do something with them on the other side of it. They're in it very briefly. I won't give it away. They don't play a very big role in this, because I wanted, the last thing I'll say about it too is, like, I didn't want it to feel like a continuation of my Justice League. I wanted it to feel like it absolutely continues that. And if you read Justice League, those threads are continued here, but they're also continued in a special thing in Justice League I'm not supposed to talk about yet, but that it is definitely, you will be happy with the way that story plays out. But you also, I didn't want it to have like Lex Luthor as the main character and the Legion of Doom and that stuff and make you feel like it was just continuing. I wanted you to feel like it was hitting you in the face with something completely new.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, so the Justice Society is in it, but they don't play a major role. Same as like Martian Manhunter is in it, but his role is in
the Justice League.
Multiverse.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. It was where?
Multiverse's End. He plays a larger role, and then he plays a big role in. We're going to do a Justice League crossover towards the end too, so he'll be in there as well.
All right, Jesse Christian keeps asking, and I'll ask it here. Not the electric guitars thing. Here we go. Can you talk about your Nightwing pitch? I don't know how much you want to talk about your Black River?
I did. I mean, that's like, I feel like it's a grounded story. I don't want to give away it's a new villain. It's not a classic villain. And it shows his days as Robin all the way to different possibilities that he wonders about happening in Gotham later in life. So you get the whole range. You get like, and other characters are in it. Bat family members are in it at different times. So it's pretty robust.
Very cool. And now, people are asking what Marvel characters and hey man, they might have forgotten that you did Iron Man Noir, one of my favorites.
I did, and I did Human Torch, the original one, the original
Jim
Human
Hammond.
Torch.
Yeah,
Scott Wagner was so nice to me when I didn't know how to write anything in comics, and then from Atomic Robo, and I did a Colossus story in a anthology, Nation X. It was Colossus and Magic story, and I still get a royalty check from Marvel for like 2 cents. Literally, like the check, it's like I
believe it.
A physical check, which was the best because it was like Spider-Man. It's like 0.02 royalties or whatever. I'm like, this check costs more to send than it does.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I did that. But Marvel characters, I have a lot of Marvel ideas, and I pitch them to Greg just to bother him all the time. So I'm like, Greg. I had one before Al took Hulk, which he's doing such an amazing job on. I really wanted to do Hulk for a while, and our story is quite different than his, so maybe there would be enough buffer. But that book is so on fire right now. It was called Hulk Smash Everything, and it was going to be like, it was with Greg, so I've always wanted to see him draw the Hulk.
Hilarious.
But it goes back to I don't want to give too much away about it, but it goes back to his origins and why gamma radiation in particular and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, but then I wanted to do I have always had a Cap story in mind that I wanted to do, and a Wolverine one too. So those 3 characters are probably my top. And then I had an idea of putting. Once I pitched to CB, I like in passing once. I'm like, CB, So I want to do a story where it's like Wolverine, Captain America, and Ghost Rider, because they all ride motorcycles, and they've all they all have they'll be solving cases from and it was a terrible pitch, but I mean I love it still, so maybe one day.
Okay, Jared Flowers wants to thank you for creating Duke Thomas. That character meant a lot to me. He
means a lot to me too. There are some characters like Harper and him that you make and you really have plans to go back to and you want to use, and then I just didn't have the bandwidth. But what Tony and Cully did with him and the Signal, I'm really proud of, and we're in discussions right now actually to do more with him in different ways within the Bat family and beyond. So I'm really, really hoping he sticks. I mean, I feel like a boy detective in Gotham who operates by day, and is Gotham's hero by day and has these abilities where he can see the kind of light imprint of things that happened moments before. There's so many right kind of concepts in that. And the Juvie Arkham was another one I loved. The idea that there's a Juvie Arkham that he's part of. So I really hope that we can get something off the ground with him. So I love that character.
That's cool, man. Let's see here. Oh, here, going back to Undiscovered Country, how'd you come up with the ideas for Destiny Man and the strange creatures like the Spangled Stars in the recent issue?
Yeah, well, we wanted to take kind of almost like all these elements of American folklore and Americana and just kind of put them in a blender and then make new things that felt weird and iconic and sort of emblematic, by their kind of recombinant pieces. So Destiny Man is the iconic kind of astronaut, but the horns are neon. So there's the neon, and he sits on a neon throne, and he's changing. Also, he's got this kind of mutated set of limbs, and so for us, it was all of these things that we associate with different aspects of Americana. I love neon sounds like a really boring topic, but I love the history of one of the stories in my story collection deals with it actually from 2005. Blue Heart, about the history of neon and neon lights, and the idea of that being such an American thing. So the neon horns, the astronaut suit,
the stars, similarly, like the idea we wanted to create a giant, like almost like a wall that these people are hanging from, but make it a flag. So we were like, oh, put stars, like giant starfish, and they'll excrete this horrible acid that makes this rusty stripe. So it's that. It's always trying to mix things that feel American, but with, you know, big, weird new ideas, and making something that feels like it's straight out of some demented folklore now.
Yeah, the designs are great, man, and I'm glad you guys are working on the movie pitch. I think it speaks for itself in terms of the possibilities. I think that's
it's a lot of fun, and it's fun to get. I mean, there's nothing better than working with a friend on stuff. So I mean, it's a good gig.
Charles was telling me the same thing a week or two ago when we were talking. So absolutely, man, it's good to hear. Hey, man, honestly, it's almost been 2 hours. I don't want to. I mean, are you tired? I don't want, are you wiped out?
I take a couple more, and then we can call it a night.
All right. While I'm looking for questions, I'll tell you that, or I'll ask you some Elvis stuff. Did you watch that 2-part HBO thing that they did a couple of years ago? The Journey. I
did. I thought it was quite good. Yeah,
me too.
I really liked it a lot. I got the album from it too. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's weird. I got into him when I was like a teenager, and I thought it would be like something hokey because I grew up in New York City, and it was kind of like, I'm gonna like something that there's no reason to like when you're in New York City. And then I love the idea. I was a kid that was like, insecure and all of that stuff, and I love the idea of this teenager who likes things that nobody else in his class would have liked, and had the confidence to go in there and act like he was already a rock star by dressing so flamboyantly and all of that, even though he had pimples and all. And I really gravitated towards that, and the Sun Sessions and all of that swagger that all those guys had, and the blues guys too at that time, Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, and that whole idea of that kind of beacon of music's blending together in different ways. So I was falling in love with the whole era of that. And then it morphed into, fun road trips to Vegas with my friends. I mean, to
Memphis,
back when it was less regulated and patrolled. I don't know if you were there in the old days when it was like.
No.
That was good.
I mean, I've heard
Elvis Presley Enterprises existed. And it was like you would go there at Elvis Week, and it was like just every crazy thing where it was like people that believed that aliens had taken Elvis, and there was like alien stuff, and then there was like the Velvet Elvises with like all these crazy Velvet Elvis things. Like I have one here actually that I got all the way back then.
Attaboy, very good.
Beautiful.
That's
I love it.
hang on. Yeah, bring it. That's great. I'll tell people. I interviewed Steve Binder, who directed the '68 comeback special, and unfortunately, the interview didn't record properly, so I lost it, and it just breaks my heart. Look at this Velvet Elvis, very nice. That looks great. That looks excellent.
When I was like 17 years old, 17 or 18 years old. I don't know. I've had it all that time, but what I loved about it was crazy, and it was like everybody's weird ideas, where it was like you go to the impersonator convention, and it was like people from all over the world interpreting it in bizarre ways. There was, people that, again, believed that he was like a ghost, and so did ghost impersonation of him, and robot Elvis. And then there were people that were political, like Elvis, who was awesome, and Elvis Elvis, who was, a big symbol of pride and everything. And, it was just everything. It was like the zaniest scene of like just everybody interpreting it and making it their own. So I loved that, but it has since changed, I think. I mean, the last time I went to that Elvis week was probably 10, 15 years ago, and it was like it was really corporate. It was Elvis. The company kind of took over the whole area, took over the whole thing.
That's too bad, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oof. All right. Well, all right. I guess here's one final question we'll get from Jake Carlson. What tips do you have for artists working with writers? Oh, that's good. That's so for how would you tell artists how to work with writers?
Well, I mean, I could flip it. I mean, I would feel the only thing I could say to artists really is like be patient with us, I guess, because we can, like, if somebody's learning how to, like, what I'd say, be honest about how you want to work, because what a writer needs, I think, and this is my opinion, so throw it out the window if you disagree. It's fine. It's subjective. But I really believe that if you're a writer in comics, like you should ask your artist how they like to work and then adapt to that as much as you can. Some people aren't that adaptable. I get it. Like, you always write full script and you write full script. But I would still try and make the I used to write full script, and then Greg really broke me of that in a way where I didn't understand. When I started, I thought everybody wrote full script all the time, and I was very meticulous. But it was just that Jock and Raphael were fine with full script, so they were like, yeah, I like full script. But Greg really wanted outlines, and we fought so badly at the beginning of our relationship where we really almost didn't work out. And it wasn't until I started giving him room. And the first issue I really stopped writing full script for him on was issue 5 of Court of Owls, where he made up the thing where it spun. And I was like, I need to stop writing full scripts for this dude.
That was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, because it's awesome. So the advice I would give to the artist is be really honest with your writer about what will bring out the best in your work, because they should listen to you, and you should have a relationship that's collaborative and open and transparent. And I feel like as a writer, the advice I'd give you is, again, talk to your artist, find out what they enjoy doing, and try your best to make sure that story is giving them that stuff as much as you can. So like if the same script for the same story, if I'm writing it for Greg or I'm writing it for Jock, wildly different. Like, both the script style will be wildly different, like where one is more outline, one is full. But I would change different elements. Like I know Jock really enjoys drawing certain things and doesn't enjoy others. And if the story calls for things he doesn't enjoy, like a horse, I apologize and I'll put it in it. But there was one panel in Death of the Family, the backup he did, where it was like a horse being carried upside down, and he still is mad at me about that. But but there are things like, I know, like, so if something calls for it, you do it. But I try and adapt to make it so that you're inviting the artist to get excited and do their best work no matter what. So, that's just communication. That's the best thing I can say between artists and writers. And that really was a learning curve for me with Greg and everybody. And, I'm very grateful for the lessons that I think he's taught. I've learned more from Greg, from all the artists, but Greg has been my most consistent partner. So he's just been an incredible mentor.
It's a great collaboration, man, and I'm glad you guys are finding new and interesting things to continue to do. And I think that was good advice. And we can put a pin on it right there, Scott. Honestly, like I said, I really appreciate you talking tonight, and thank you for really sharing what you did, because I think people like to know where guys are coming from, and women for that matter. And
it's a pleasure. And honestly, again, I hope everybody is out there staying safe, and and there are way more important things happening right now. And the last thing I want is for people out there to think that we're saying, that how self-important comics are, that stuff at all. It's honestly like, be focused on the things that matter right now. Go out there and speak your mind, and be a part of something good, and ultimately these things, if you're up for it and you want a story, and that, like, we're very proud of what we're doing over here with metal. And there's so many good books that we pick up too. I wish I had time to go on. I've just started reading comics again, because we've been so under the gun by having all the kids home from school and Quinn's and all that stuff.
I guess you'll just have to come back, Scott, and
I guess I will.
And talk more, and it would be fine. And I'm sure people would love to hear more from you. And we can, this is the promotion conversation. If you want to have a relaxing conversation, we can have one of those and just talk about the stuff we like.
I feel like
Nick always wants that. Judd is always like, hey, can we just talk about stuff we love? I'm like, of course we can. Whatever you want, man. So no, that's great. Honestly, man.
We covered everything. We got to talk a little bit about the work and that stuff. But
absolutely, man. No, and seriously, I really, especially these last couple of weeks, I was worried about, should I be releasing stuff as far as new content. But honestly, I absolutely support the change that is necessary, and I really do believe in that, and I know you do. And I also think that we are inundated with it, and just these weird circumstances right now. I don't think it's bad to take an hour or two and talk about something frivolous to give our minds a rest from
I agree. And the
stuff.
other thing I'd say though too is like, I'm not. Let me just plug my thing in so it doesn't die.
Sure.
The thing I'd say is like, I get caught up in my own stuff and all of that too, and like just I'm not as active on social media as I used to be. We have the baby and all of that, but one of the big privileges I had at DC was being able to teach the writers workshop, where it was about new voices and that stuff. And what I'd say is I learned more from looking at the work being done by people coming into the industry than they ever learned from me. And some of the people out there are working, in comics in different capacities. But the biggest takeaway I had was how inspiring and invigorating it is when you take a moment to see some of the work that's being done outside of the stuff that you immediately know and go to that are the loudest things on the shelves and all of that all the time. And right now is a great moment to go out and explore and find emergent voices. I wish I used my, my platform better for that. I'm trying honestly to highlight books by people that I think don't get as much attention as they should and all of that too. But I would just encourage everybody, both A, support your shop, because it's a rough time for shops, and also B, try and go out and support people that are making comics that are working for good change, in the world that way too. And also, even if they're just new voices, go out there and, support emergent creators. So I hope people will take the time and see that as part of an effort now too.
That sounds great, man. That's great. Thanks for taking the time. Death Metal out next Wednesday. Undiscovered Country, the collection coming in July, and issue 7 coming in August. So that's, and of course,
six is out today, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Cause I did read 6 today. I didn't realize it didn't come out today.
Today's
yeah. Wednesday this week. Okay. That's great, man. Yeah. So, the full first arc is available now. If you want to buy all 6 issues, they're available, or if you want to get the trade, it'll be available in a couple weeks. And then, issue 7 in August, and more announcements to come from Scott Snyder. So
definitely a lot coming in the next few months.
That sounds great, man. Well, hey, like I said, when it becomes public and you want to come back, you're always welcome.
Thanks, John. It's great talking to you, man. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, take care, man. Scott Snyder, everybody. Great talking to him today, and thank you, Scott. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Guess what? In about 10 minutes, we're going to start another word balloon. It'll be a scene missing conversation with Larry Young and Robert Meyer Burnett, and we're talking about movies. We're talking about remakes. Little James Bond talk. Of course, got to get some Star Trek in there with Larry and Rob on the conversation. So just give me a little bit of time to pee and relax, and then I'll have the next episode of Word Balloon Live. It's a busy night, but I'm up for it. I hope you are too. Thanks a lot for watching this conversation. As I always end my talks, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.